Welcome to HighRoad U. At the U, HighRoad Solution believes that modern learning is all about being multi-channel, multi-format, and user-centric. We are creating educational content based on the content you want. Be sure to check our future program schedule by clicking on the HighRoad U resources link in the important information box on the top right-hand side of your screen. We are pleased to present today's webinar entitled, What is Marketing Automation? With Suzanne Carawan, Chief Marketing Officer at HighRoad Solution. My name is Jeff Baker, and I will be your moderator for today's program. Today's presentation will last approximately 45 minutes and include a specific question and answer period at the end of the session. You can ask a question anytime via the web conference system by simply typing it into the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen and then clicking the call out button or hitting enter on your keypad. These instructions will be repeated later in the program. If you have any technical questions during the event, please email support@highroadsolution.com. Today's webinar is being recorded, and all participant lines will be muted during the live program. Attendees of this live webinar will also have earned ASAE credits. Now, I am pleased to introduce today's content leader, Suzanne Carawan. Having held global positions in the association, nonprofit, telecom, and event industries, Suzanne has had the joy of crafting the brand story for many companies and C-suite executives, providing the strategic marketing plan and overseeing the execution of digital, event, content, and channel marketing programs. An expert in branding and go-to-market strategies, Suzanne has launched dozens of products and programs and brought several companies to the market. As an active participant, member, and volunteer, Suzanne is a member of the American Society of Association Executives and serves on their meetings and exposition council. Suzanne serves on the advisory board for the Event Alley Show and is a member of several event industry associations where she is a passionate advocate of event technology and marketing. And with that, I'd like to turn the floor over to Suzanne. Please take it away.
Thanks, Jeff. So thanks, everybody, for joining me today to talk about what's becoming a very hot topic out there in the marketing world in the nonprofit and association space. It's historically been kind of relegated to the corporate area, but in the last, I'd say 3 to 4 months, you're seeing more and more of this crop up in our space. And today I wanted to kind of present kind of the 101 of it and why this is happening so we get a firm understanding of the basics and we develop some fundamentals there. So what I find is that we often, when it comes to marketing automation, we jump right into talking about the tools and the technology, and all of a sudden it goes from we've kind of skipped a couple of steps. So I want to make sure today we take a little bit more time and we start talking about how this has come about and why this is going to become increasingly relevant to you in the association and nonprofit marketing space, and why this is going to be something you definitely want to be able to put into your toolkit and that you have listed perhaps on your resume or your CV, and that you really understand what's actually happening out there in perhaps the greater world as a whole. And I say that because I'm a long-time advocate of saying that when it comes to association nonprofit marketing, I don't know that we have as many tools and fundamentals and skill building activities, et cetera, as we could. And I want to make sure that HighRoad's doing our part to be able to put that out there and really make sure that we're being treated as a vertical within the overall association professional industry, that we need to have more time and take more care in crafting these new strategies, because for the most part it's all new. All this digital marketing, all this stuff, it's really largely new, and we're going to talk about how this has now come about and why this is now a pivotal time in perhaps not only your career, but also probably in the infrastructure of your association or nonprofit, as well as in how you guys are going to market. And I firmly believe we're seeing a big shift now as to how we're going to be able to see going forward for the next probably decade. So before we get into that, because that sounds rather lofty, why don't we stop and take a quick Wikipedia moment and talk about what is the definition of marketing automation, because I think it's always good to kind of start with, what do people normally think of when they hear marketing automation? So if you read the definition there, it says it's referring to software platforms designed for marketing departments and organizations, and you notice the part that I pulled out and made big in red, to automate repetitive tasks. And by the way, if I can just step back and not have too big of a chip on my shoulder as a marketer, but we're kind of the last in line, if you want to think about it, because as systems go, software was created to automate inventory management, very long ago, billing management, invoicing, membership dues management, event registration, right? All of that, all these departments have been automated throughout the last 20 years. And now we're kind of finally over to the marketing side. Okay, so we're kind of last on the list, but now we're over here to repetitive tasks and trying to make these more streamlined, which is great because if you're in marketing, you might agree that oftentimes our time is just seen as free and just overhead, and and so it's seen as like not a big deal that we're just doing the same things over and over. I'll give you a great example. If you've ever spent more than 2 hours a week doing email list management, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever had to cut and paste text from a document to a website to a blog to another website to an email newsletter, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're in this world now where we want to talk about how can we get better at being able to get back to being creative, or be creative perhaps, be innovative, and take all this redundancy of the cutting and pasting and list copying and data reconciliation and automate that so that we can actually get into really multi-touch point messaging and looking at how we can affect the overall life cycle, the overall user experience. So the other part is, you notice I pulled out reduces human error. Okay, because all the systems I just talked about, how many times do we introduce human error as a marketer? And you feel like you might be going a little bit batty because you felt like you just updated the web page one place and now you put it into the newsletter and now I've introduced new funky spacing that wasn't there before, and you just feel like, what is going on? So reducing human error, always a plus for the marketer who tends to be a little on the obsessive compulsive side, and also the work is so detail oriented. So if we can find a way to mitigate that risk, speed up our life, and get some of that time back, well, that sounds like a good thing. The third piece I pulled out of this definition is that the purpose really of these marketing automation platforms is to streamline sales and marketing organizations. And I pulled that out for a specific reason. Historically, in the nonprofit association space, we often don't think in terms of departments. Like, this sounds like a very corporate organizational structure, sales and marketing. We typically don't see those organizational structures in that kind of proper terminology within the world of associations. Maybe sales and marketing is kind of under membership, or maybe some of it's under communications, or maybe there's a split between these two, or some of it is actually under events. So what's interesting is that we're seeing a movement, we're seeing a real shift that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes, towards going to a place where the corporate world and the historic, association nonprofit structures are really converging, and you're seeing a lot of movement from associations and nonprofits pulling marketers out of the corporate space, bringing them into that side of the house. And you're also seeing a little bit you're seeing association marketers and nonprofits being pulled into the corporate space. And I'll tell you why that is. On the association side and the nonprofit side, the organizations have not traditionally had to do demand creation. They haven't traditionally had to compete in the same way that, let's say, a consumer brand has to compete. So sometimes they're lacking the skills. They don't have the capacity to know how to do lead generation, lead conversion, et cetera. That's a skill that's now needed, absolutely needed, in the association nonprofit marketing space. On the other side of it, in the corporate space, the corporates have not traditionally had to do anything about loyalty marketing, about how to retain people, how to treat them well, if you will. And that, of course, is the absolute wheelhouse of the association nonprofit marketer, typically. So they can then, those skills translate beautifully over in the corporate world that now needs to look at loyalty programs and how do we actually treat customers well now that we understand how valuable they are to get them, et cetera. So it's a really interesting dynamic that's coming across now between kind of the corporate world and the association nonprofit world. And so, here at HighRoad, we're really watching those trends because we're seeing how those differences in marketing techniques and skills need to be all within the house of the association nonprofit marketer. And we're here, of course, to help bridge that gap and to hopefully provide some fun new knowledge. So if we move on and we say, okay, well, what's the ultimate goal of marketing automation? Okay, and I would contend that the reason we want to do be able to streamline repetitive tasks, reduce human error, and we want to streamline our operations is because at the end of the day, we want to live our life. So we want to live our life, and I would tell you that cutting and pasting and list management and updating things in 3, 4, 5, 7, umpteen different places and constantly proofreading is not what I would consider a high quality of life in 2013 and beyond. And you don't have to have that anymore because we do have these tools that are readily available that we can now be able to adopt and now utilize and really get going on our marketing to be a lot more, we can kind of amplify what we're doing and kind of make a big leap forward very quickly by adopting some of these newer tools. So let's keep focusing on our ultimate goal here at HighRoad is to live your life, okay? So that's what we're here to do, and so we want to talk about how we can do that. So the other hype definition I'm going to tell you that you often hear when you hear marketing automation is people describe it as email marketing on steroids. Now, I personally hate anything that somebody says it's content management on steroids. It's program management on steroids. It's fundraising on steroids. I hate the on steroids part, but I'm going to put it out there because oftentimes you hear that. And again, historically it did come out of the email marketing world, but marketing automation has really gone on to be a whole kind of 3 different classes of automation tasks. It could be workflow, it could be business intelligence, or it could be lead generation. And it goes into many more platforms than just email marketing. Case in point, later this month, we're going to talk about automating your social marketing, okay? And so we want to remember that it's just not email marketing, but as any good digital marketer will tell you, even so in 2013, email marketing platform is still going to be the backbone of your digital strategy. There's a lot of people out there still, email is dead. Far from it. It's booming because it too has transformed and it too has evolved. And we're going to look at that a little bit later today as well. Okay, so I wanted to tell you, I told you at the beginning, I wanted to take a pause, and before we get into talking about different platforms, the technology and the techniques, we want to talk about what's going on at a bigger level. I talked a little bit about these shifts between needed skills between marketers, between different segments of the overall marketing industry, if you will. But where are we going with this? Where is all of this heading? Why is automation now really becoming a top priority, a really CIO, CMO type of a discussion that really you do want to bring in the rest of your executives and everybody wants to start thinking this way? And why is that happening? Well, the biggest thing is that there's 3 seismic shifts underway, and we're going to talk about each in turn. The first is moving to this data ecosystem type of model. The second is becoming user-centric, and I know that sometimes that's abhorrent to hear, like association marketers hate hearing that because they're saying we've always been member-centric, but I think we'll talk in a little bit of how we mean. That means like the actual operations of your organization revolve around your user. That's the big shift. And the third one is moving to a lead conversion mindset. So let's break these down. So the first one is a data ecosystem. So we're all, whether we know it or not, slowly creeping towards this world called big data. And a lot of people tell you, oh, you're doing big data now. No, you're not. If you're not working with, massive terabytes of data and massive data marts, you're not in the world of big data yet. But we are, most of us, in a world of centralized data to some extent, whether that's through our association management system or our donor management system or our CRM, et cetera. And what most kind of MarTech, and that's the, again, blending of marketing and technology coming together to really have information, what most people are starting to get to is an ecosystem of systems within their organization that are all interconnected, right? So what's great about technology is that it's largely come down in price. It's largely become truly productized. So it's configurable. It's not all custom developed anymore, off-the-shelf pieces. And the big piece is that really good software nowadays would be open in the sense that it has available APIs or application programming interfaces or little portholes, if you will, where the data can easily go in and out and be moved across different applications. So if you think of the lines here as data flows or data highways, if you will, this means that now I'm able to go get the best software that I like that fits me as a user or that fits my members the best or my donors the best, with the knowledge and the guarantee or the security, the confidence that that data can now move between these systems and be able to flow. This radically kind of changes my whole buyer mentality in trying to buy technology and also being able to say, how can I now situate this so I'm going to be able to develop the best user experience possible for each of my kind of target markets. This is why, by the way, you've seen probably the numbers where Forrester says, by, I think, in 1 or 2 years, marketing is going to outspend all other departments in technology. Why? Because marketing are traditionally the group that actually has the touch points with the actual end customer. So again, maybe that for your group might be a little bit more on the membership side or a little bit more on the fundraising side. But whatever that organization within your overall association or nonprofit that has all the touch points, that governs the touch points with end users, you now need a lot of software to be able to do that well and to track it. And what's great is now that we connect all these systems, we can actually get to a point where ultimately we're trying to measure how influential we are across this particular user's experience. Okay, and so we're going to talk about that in a bit, called journey mapping. But by and large, we're looking at going to a data ecosystem, and a little take-home tip for you is you could take the same type of structure. These are typically platforms that you have within any association or nonprofit, and you can sit down and start to outline this and say, where do we have connections, where do we not, how great would it be if we did have, our webinar platform integrated in with our association management system, how great would it be if the surveys were, were integrated to the email, were integrated to the webinar, and we had one whole system that we can just push out and be able to see the data across the whole bit and not have to touch any of that, right? That's the way people are now thinking. And not just thinking, they're doing it. So HighRoad, we specialize in integrations. We're specialists in putting these lines together and making all of this data flow, and again, getting your life back. Okay, so the benefits, again, of putting this data ecosystem together, there's many, but the two that I wanted to pull out is that what it allows you to do is you can give the people what they want. Okay, so instead of saying, we're only going to have our one association management system and expect it to do everything under the sun. You're saying, well, you know what? We are free to go get the best kind of point tool solution out there, let's say for webinars, or let's say for doing event registration, or let's say for doing email marketing, and we're going to connect those in to the other system, and that's going to be okay, and that's actually going to be preferred, or that's going to be great, because now we're going to have an amazing solution that's exactly what, let's say, our members who are on the go want to get. They want to get emails on their tablet, and so we're able to give them exactly what they want, but knowing that the data is still going to be there for us and that we're going to be able to utilize it and be able to do more with it. Okay, so it's a win-win situation to put these systems together. Now, it does change some things. It certainly changes budgeting and it changes some management, but overall it's going to make that data accessible and allows us to, if you call it, free up the data so we can actually finally start to really compile all this data that we have had sitting around in our organization probably for 10 years. But it hasn't been so difficult to pull it together and really get a report on it that most people have never gotten to the analysis stage. We're really just masters of collecting data at most associations. That's typically what we are, and again, that's not uncommon whatsoever, but we're getting to the stage, we're evolving to the point where now really we're talking about, okay, how do we get to the next level? And the next generation, of course, is analysis of that and getting to the point where we're actually being able to, again, be innovative. All right, so second, or let's finish with this. So likely, what does this mean to you? So I was saying that bigger budgets likely coming your way. You need to get the right tools. You need to have a different management. So now, again, instead of spending all the money on developing applications, now the money is spent in developing those integrations and maintaining those and getting those to be even better. So being able to really utilize functionality that are already in these commoditized application products and being able to do the next step, which is putting the money in getting really intelligent with it. Also, it can mean that it can stop with it's good enough and the one-day approach, right? So we can stop saying that. We can say, no, we don't have to wait anymore because these tools exist out on the market. We just need to spend our time in putting them together. right, and getting that data flowing. So we need to spend our time in thinking about integrating these tools and what would be a great data flow and a great user flow for this. It also means that we are, though, in an era where I would contend, and HighRoad would contend, we need to have more staff across the organization with fundamental knowledge about data, about applications, about reporting, about working from this user-centric viewpoint. That these types of thinking, this type of kind of data system thinking cannot be relegated to just the information technology people. Marketers have got to be down with this plan. They got to understand it, and they got to get these fundamentals and feel really comfortable working in that data capacity. Likewise, I think communication people too. I think the C-level people should. I think the event people need to understand this as well, because it really then allows you to then functionally as an organization say, how can we leap forward? And if you look at some of the big brands that have done that successfully, if you look at Starbucks, if you look at Zappos, if you look at Dick's Sporting Goods, if you look at some of the Pampers, they're so good at marketing because they've been able to aggregate all that data together and then get predictive. They can predict the needs of their current customers and get in front of them. And they are just basically throwing out breadcrumbs, and you're coming right to the brand. Okay? And they're very good at being able to pull you in because the entire functional organization behind Starbucks, all the people that work at Starbucks, all the people that work at Under Armour, all the people that work at Nike, they all go through kind of a training where they have this kind of base fundamental, and they're coming from a data-centric, user-centric viewpoint. And likely after we can get to that point, if we can build this kind of new capacity about this new type of organization, we can then shift our work to really being more creative again, right? We want to get out of the mass industry. We're no longer factory workers, okay? We don't want to do list management. We don't want to do cut and paste. That's the equivalent of pulling a handle, on a factory line. We want to be creative economy workers, and that's what's going to help our associations and our nonprofits really have those brand stories that get members and donors excited and get them to engage, okay? And so one of the things I always think when we talk about engagement is you can't talk about engagement if you're not changing up any of the creativity and you're not getting innovative, right? So you can't just say, well, let's just stick new tools and formulas out there, and now we have more things to cut and paste and expect members to engage. Okay, we got to kind of retune the engine within. Okay. Second part of becoming user-centric we want to talk about of marketing automation, and this is kind of a fundamental for you to really employ marketing automation well. It really requires that you understand your segmentation of your audience probably at a finer level than you perhaps currently have. So a lot of times people, if we come in, we would say, okay, what's your segmentation? And we hear member and non-member, and we hear, well, we break people down by states, where they're by committee, maybe by volunteer role, maybe by number of years that they've maybe been a member, or maybe by donor class, so they're, these are major donors, these are, kind of they break into our pyramid, et cetera. But it goes beyond that now. And so what organizations are really doing is getting down to developing buyer personas, where they say, we're trying to target a group like this. And they get very specific. And maybe the group they're trying to target are going to be the 23, 24-year-old millennials who are now entering the workforce and are lacking skill training in interpersonal communications. I'm making this up. And maybe they want to then say, okay, well, the type that we want are going to be, females, and it's going to be within the northeast region of the United States. And we're going to really get clear as to who we're actually targeting, I mean, down to the point where corporations would take a buyer persona, actually write out a paragraph of the day in her life, maybe give her a name, give her an image, so it's almost like a person, so they can really craft in their head, cement in their head who they're actually targeting, okay? And then within that, they can say, okay, well, let's look at niche groups that we want to grow. So maybe they want more millennials, or maybe they're looking and saying, hey, we've got a lot of this type of member. We actually don't want that type of member anymore. We want to sunset them. We want to get rid of them. We want to phase them out. And then maybe we have a group that's like our checkbook members, and we're fine with that, and we just want to nurture them. But getting really specific as to what those parameters are around that type of group. So what What's great about that is it takes more time, but again, if we can get out of doing list management and cut and paste world, right, we could get some focus in on this. What's great about doing this little exercise, though, if you've never done buyer personas, I highly suggest you do it. Even if you just do it for one new buyer persona for your next annual meeting, it's amazing what will come out of that exercise. But once you really understand that segmentation, it becomes really clear as to who you need to either grow and create demand with, who you need to nurture, who you need to basically phase out and not spend your time on, right? And that is going to help you start planning how you're going to automate these tasks. Okay, so then we can look at the processes around these target segments and get really clear in our head as to where to spend our time and money. Okay, and so I'd also contend that marketing automation, you need to get your life back, but it's also, you're trying to bring down the cost of either sale, the cost of acquiring a new customer, or the cost of retaining a current customer. You want to bring that down as low as possible so that you can then, again, reallocate those resources, okay, so to do more. And usually that goes back into brand awareness or into loyalty marketing. The last part of becoming user-centric, though, and this is the kicker, is that it does require a lot of organizational discipline. You're going to have to develop organizational discipline, which means that if we're now focusing on buyer personas or small groups and we're saying, well, we have to get them what they want, that also means it's not about the organization. Not about the organization anymore. It can't be that your executive director says, well, this is what I like, because unless they are a perfect representation of the target market you want, okay? So you have to be able to then really say, okay, as a capacity builder for the whole organization, you have to say, who's the target market, and only their opinion matters. So if they want to get email on their tablet on Saturday morning, while they're waiting for their kids at soccer practice, and that's how they want to consume your content, you cannot say, we can't do that as the organization because we don't have somebody on staff in the office physically on Saturday morning. Okay? These two things don't go together. If that's what your members want, if that's the highest, most probable time they're going to connect with you and utilize your content or collaborate with your social networks, et cetera, then that has to be the norm. Okay, that means you got to restructure the organization around that particular person and maybe rethink the way that you've done some things. Okay, so again, maybe you need to become more virtual. Maybe you need to alternate hours. Maybe it's okay that the member calls on Saturday about an email and nobody's actually physically in the office to take that call. Right? So we have to kind of think about how we become user-centric. And there's tons of consultants out there that will come in and talk to you about restructuring to be user-centric. But it's amazing when you start really looking at your processes about how organizationally driven you probably currently are. And marketing automation can help you with that because it can be there when you're not physically, let's say, in the office. My best example is what I just said. We have at HighRoad, we have hundreds of clients on our email marketing platform. The majority of them still send email only during Monday through Friday between typical work hours because they live in fear of a member calling and somebody's actually not there to physically answer the phone. Okay? But once you start working with them, you start realizing if they use different send times, they'd get higher open rates because a lot of times when they're sending it, it's convenient for the organizational staff, but the actual members they're targeting are not able in a position to actually read the email during the day. So they're kind of two ships passing in the night. So becoming really aligned with your users can make a huge difference in you being able to engage with them effectively and again, get them to do the task or the activity that you're looking for. All right. So I was talking about earlier about a journey map, and this is a tool that you can use. I thought I'd just throw it out there because it's a really popular exercise for getting you to understand how many touch points that you might have with a typical user in their day. So if you look at this example of a journey map, this is one that I did. And again, you don't need anything high tech. This is just me drawing on the whiteboard. But this is me saying, okay, if I'm looking at a user and they're going to use the weather channel, okay, they need to get weather information, across their entire day, how many touch points could I possibly have if I'm the weather channel brand in being able to connect with them effectively? And so basically you take your buyer persona person and you map out what a theoretical day would be for them in using, in this case, the weather channel. So at 6 in the morning, they wake up, they use their mobile app to check on the weather. they start commuting. This is in the D.C. area, so it could take up to 2 hours. Maybe they hear the Weather Channel updates on the radio, second channel of communication. They were sitting at their desks at 11:45 thinking about lunch. They're using the website to get communication there. They come over, they decide to meet a friend for lunch. They get a mobile text message automatically telling them it's about to rain. Luckily, they had read the website, so they brought their umbrella. So fourth touch point, it starts raining. They take their own Instagram picture, they tag it, they tweet it, et cetera, et cetera. Their friend gets it back on their own email client. Website, everybody's looking to see how the commute home is going to be on the Weather Channel, and they go home, and the last time they see the Weather Channel is 10 at night with a glass of wine. Okay? So if you look at this, 6 different touch points I could have with my particular brand over a course of a day, giving valuable information to this particular user. Bringing this back to marketing automation, we use the same technique to say, how could I do a series of multiple touch points with a particular user to get my brand out in front of them to be able to provide something useful? Now, something useful is not information like the deadline for the event registration ends on Friday. That's all about you, the organization. You got to give them something really useful in this process. So organizations are now using this idea of journey maps to really be able to look across a life cycle as to a user experience. Okay, so you could use this same thing for, actually I was just at ASAE, and we use this in our meetings and exposition committee to outline the member experience of the annual meeting. So starting from the first time they get an email about annual meeting, all the way through they get the survey, right, all the different touch points we'd have. Then you can say, great, where are the pieces we could automate? Okay, you could use this for a variety of things, a welcome new member onboarding process, a new onboarding process for a staff, et cetera, et cetera. So you can do this and just draw it out, and it's a great way to see how many touch points you can have, and also maybe what other channels of communication you might be able to use to better either lower the cost or better communicate or include more people. Like perhaps along here you say, well, maybe we should add on a virtual component to our meeting, or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Also, I wanted to point out that this is a true tool that's used out there in all of the world of corporate marketing. You see, especially now in digital marketing, because it helps to make it not so abstract. And so HighRoad is currently partnered with a company called Demand Metric that does, they produce marketing and sales tools, so white papers and case studies and workbooks and webinars and the whole bit. And by the way, if you're a client of HighRoad, you're going to see an email coming very shortly to you because we're giving you access to all of their tools as just a benefit of being part of HighRoad. But I wanted to, but I'm happy to also give out this this diagram because this really shows you how you match up this customer journey process with the buying experience. So it's able to, and it's a great framework, and I wanted everybody to have this so you could take it back into your own organization and see how you can start to marry these things up. Because which, again, we want to go for is understanding who the user is, understanding the experience, and then being able to overlay where can we automate these tasks, and then to either lower the cost and or hopefully to also exponentially increase the amount of revenue that we can pull from them. Okay, so third process, seismic shift that's happening, is moving to a lead conversion mindset. So a lot of this terminology in my consulting career with associations and nonprofits, I don't find that we use these terms that often, but you're seeing this happen more and more, and this is coming into very much in vogue, and I think this is the way the whole thing is going to go, where we're all talking now in the standardized lead to conversion process, and it's a whole set of terminology. But basically, it's taking kind of the Salesforce.com mentality and applying now into sales enablement, and then looking at, okay, how do we move a lead, a suspect, if you will, from the first digital touch point they might have with you, whether it's clicking through an email, whether it's visiting a website, whether it's doing something on Facebook, because now you can create Facebook app pages where they can, you know, have forums and interact and contests, and there's all sorts of ways you can pull people in from Facebook, or they're using traditional means like they're just calling you, or they're responding by email via a direct mail piece that you sent. In any way it is, you're looking at this process now of moving these suspect people that could one day be members or donors through some sort of usually channel here, so website, Facebook, and call center. They take some sort of action, and then we score it. We give them literally a score. There's different scoring systems. I'm just showing you grades like you would get in school, just to give you the understanding. But a lot of companies and organizations use numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you score them in some way, and at that point they become a prospect. And what you then do is you say, okay, well, the ones that scored an A+, meaning they look like they want to give us $1 million, looks like a very hot prospect, we're going to treat them in one specific way. And the ones that seem like they're interested but not going to give us $1 million within 30 days, we're going to treat them as maybe a B, and we're going to put them into another bucket and handle them in a different way. And the ones that are they just kind of disappear and they have no interest in us, we're just going to ignore them for the moment until they crop up again, et cetera. And that process is called lead nurturing. So you put them into some sort of user-centric communication funnel, and you keep kind of rolling them around until something comes out of that. And hopefully the thing that comes out of it is you actually get a customer at the end of it, and you call that conversion, okay? And so that's kind of the framework of marketing automation. Remember, we were talking about taking a platform and being able to put it into a process where you're able to ultimately enable sales and marketing to generate new business. So this whole flow now, you're seeing all of this lead scoring. You probably heard it through your association management system vendor maybe. Lead scoring, engagement scoring is becoming a big piece of it. And of course, that's great to house it in your association management system, but where you're actually getting it is way earlier in the process when it's coming through your websites or emails or social media channels, et cetera. Okay? And so this moving to lead conversion mindset marries up perfectly with marketing automation because remember, we're looking at the journey of how they're moving through experience. We're looking at how we can get them to, what we're trying to then do is say, how can we kind of intercept them and cue them up so that they do more of what we want, getting a better lead score, and then what can we do to entice them to basically convert over to being a customer. So if you were to look at just marketing automation and marketing automation consultants, all this vernacular they would just be throwing at you left and right? And they would come in and say, what's your lead scoring model? What are you doing for lead nurturing? What's your conversion ratio? Et cetera, et cetera. So we can start to really talk in these terms and build these programs in by using marketing automation tools, and it sets us up again to make that monumental leap forward very quickly. All right. So again, that lead conversion mindset, it really does separate lead generation between new and kind of loyalty programs, meaning they're already a member, they're already a donor, and I'm going to sit there and cultivate them and hopefully get them to either buy more, donate more, et cetera. It's intensely data-driven. Everything I was saying here, if you look back, this whole thing, we're able to measure at each point, which means that now we're really looking at this whole process from a very scientific standpoint, which may be good or bad and could be an organizational adjustment when people are saying, well, I just feel like we should send them an email. We don't feel like we're seeing enough registration, so let's just, you get out of the panic mode of sending, I think emails are usually the problem, of sending emails from emotional duress, right? That's what I like to call it. Instead, you can set this process up earlier and then study the data and say, okay, what do we need to do to adjust this to either ratchet up more conversion or to pull it down because we can't handle the number of leads. This mindset is also extremely experimental in nature. So you can see, we can say, well, maybe we need to adjust the user experience by inserting a coupon right there or inserting a reward and see if that adjusts behavior. And so if it doesn't, we change it, or we can try something else. It also changes the nature of discounting. So instead of having fire sale at the week before that everybody knows you're going to do, so that's why they don't register until the week before it's closed, instead of doing that, you can rethink how you want to use discounting and incentivization across this entire marketing automation flow. Last piece, as we said before, can't emphasize enough, deep understanding of the segmentation and being campaign-driven, meaning not mass market. What do I mean by that? It can no longer be just one message to everybody. You really do have to break out these messages specifically. And why would you not? Your email platforms now can handle using dynamic content, so I can see a different story, for me versus somebody else in a different role in the company. these things can all be done now so easily. Why would you just be sending out one email that's hopefully covering probably 3 generations of members or donors that you're trying to target? Okay, so use the tools that are there. All right, so then what does this thing really look like? Because I feel, it's all been theoretical to this point, and I think it really helps now if you can just solidify using some visuals about this whole thing, this holy grail called marketing automation. So how do you get started? Where do we go? And what does it look like is kind of our next section. So you see here I've got the whiteboard, and everything about marketing automation is really in the planning. So again, with the organizational discipline. Instead of just jumping to the tactics and hitting the go button of submit on emails or whatever it might be, instead of doing that, you got to take a pause and you got to step back and say, let's plan out the customer experience, the whole life cycle of this campaign, et cetera. And then again, understand their journey, understand who we're targeting, understand how we can intercept those different touch points and be able to do something to sway the member or the donor our way to get them to do the desired behavior. Okay? So typically, marketing automation really does start with a whiteboard, and you're going to plan it out first on paper or on your whiteboard before you just go into a tool and try to set something up. Okay? And that's the real key. So examples of what kinds of campaigns are great to put into a marketing automation process: welcoming new members, renewals, having a whole system that automatically sends out birthday emails, let's say, or saying thank you for being a member. You've been a member for 2 years now. Congratulations, we love you, and do you know that here's 3 services that you could be using that we haven't seen that you're using now? Wouldn't that be helpful? And why can I know that? Because my email is connected to my association management system, okay? Great for event marketing. So, hi, we know you've registered. It's now, 3 weeks before the conference. Now's the time to now go and look for your mobile app and go ahead and download it. Okay, that would be, and those emails can be completely set up so that they're automatically sent out. You don't have to do anything about it, and now you can really focus in on the event, let's say live event experience itself. Great to do for publications, okay? So you put all the content on your website. Wouldn't that be great if you can just scrape that off, put it into an automated email, and have that sent out? And then it's based on your preferences. That's all possible. Why not? Why are you cutting and pasting twice? We have a webinar on that later on this month. Great for continuing education or certification programs. Hi, we're reading off your association management database that you've got 6 months before, that you've got to get your continuing education credits in the door. So why not just set them up with a series of automated messaging to let them know that and say, here's some opportunities where you can fill those gaps. You can set all of that logic, all of that timing, all of, let's say, those emails up ahead of time so that so they're just automatically running without your intervention. Remember? Live your life. And what you're doing now, instead of setting up emails and cutting and pasting and handling that part, you're now stepping back and looking at the reporting side and analyzing, okay, how's this thing running? What could we be doing to either tweak up the engagement or, ratchet it down? And that, again, is that difference in mindset. So what do the actual tools look like? So I've given you, in the last couple of minutes we have together, a couple of screenshots as to what these things actually look like to now give you a visual of what we're talking about. So here, for example, is a welcome program, and this is based on our email marketing platform. And so basically, you can come in, and it's going to tell you that what we're trying to do is set up an automated system where once someone becomes and you can decide what the welcome is, a new member, perhaps it's a committee leader or a committee volunteer, a state chapter president, perhaps they just decided they want to become part of your volunteer program. So whatever you want to classify as program, perhaps it's even like they just joined one of your online, groups within your social networking program and whatnot. It doesn't really matter. So whatever your welcome is, you can basically see that the program anatomy allows you to take this new group of people, these new people that subscribe that are in this new bucket of welcome to this particular program, and then you're able to automatically walk them through a series of emails to the point at which you feel like they've become welcome. Okay, so it's very, very simple, and it's set up for you. So the program structure would, again, allow you to say, Okay, here's a group of people. An email gets sent out. You can click on that and change whatever the email says. You get to fill in where it says wait 2 days. You can fill that in. So maybe you want to wait 24 days before the next touch point. Then at 24 days, automatically, here comes the next email. You, of course, determine everything that goes into the contents of that email, whether it's a link to video, whether it is a link to a survey, whether it's a link and downloads to a bunch of, let's say it's a chapter volunteer and they need to have, the rules and regulations and whatnot. You can determine what that is. You could put coupons in there. You could incent them to say, hey, why don't you tell more of your friends? If you tell and bring another member in, we'll give you $600 towards the annual conference. I mean, again, so the creativity is endless. And then let's say after a period of 2 days, if they don't respond to that one, well, now you can send another email, and in that email you're going to do X, Y, and Z to try to get them again to react to you and to interact with you. And again, if you see at the bottom here, your program settings, you can name it, you can put on the start date, you can talk about when you want to send it, and you can enable it or disable it as you see fit. So what's great about this? What did we do? We took away the redundant task of trying to set up one email after the other and somehow connect them based on days. And we've been able now to say, okay, the creativity now is going to be what are we going to put in the bodies of this email in terms of content and copy and imagery and incentive programs to get these people to move along whatever curve we want them to of engagement. All right. And by the way, what's great about this is since it's also connected in with your association management system, there's no reason we couldn't pull out all sorts of data we have in there about them and include it in that email. So let's say the certification credits, I can read right off your certification module of what your current certification, let's say courses you've taken, and include it in that particular personalized email and automate it. So they can say, hey, you've got 6 months left to get these credits. We've already seen you've taken these 4 classes, but you need to take these other 3. Now that's a helpful email, okay? So no reason you can't automate that whole process. So I'm showing here that if I clicked on one of those emails, I have the ability now to put in whatever content I want, in whatever format I want. And by the way, this will be mobile friendly because you can do it in responsive design and be able to have all of that included in here, including, like I said, personalization, including I can pull out really pertinent data from my association management system or from my content management system and populate it in here, and also make sure I have it that's suitable for text and for a mobile mobile-friendly version, and have all of that. So now my team is not spent setting up email, cutting and pasting email, doing the list management. It's spent in creatively saying, what are we going to put in these emails? What are we going to do to incent them? How are we going to move them along this curve to get them to do whatever we want them to do? So perhaps in the welcome email, it's great that they join, but what we really want them to do is come to the annual meeting, because we know statistically that if a new member comes to the annual meeting once, the likelihood is they'll stay to be a member for another 3 years, let's say. So what we can do now is set up a series saying, how do we basically cultivate that new member in such a way as they have a pathway to being where we want them to be, okay? So I think the difference is we used to kind of say, well, I don't know, it's up to them, we'll send them an email, we'll send them a newsletter, and we didn't really craft out that experience about what's in it for them every step of the way. And because we didn't have the time, but now we have the time because these tools have allowed us to do that very easily. Next example I have is, what about a win-back campaign? So this is also just built into our tool. So here we go. We've got our typical member. They've gone away, gone dark on us. We don't know what's happened. We want to get them back. Or maybe last year they went to the event. We haven't seen them. We'd like them to come back. Where are they? We can set up an entire program structure in much the same way, in the multi-step way, to be able to say, what's in the content of this email? We can put all sorts of stuff in there. How many days do we wait? If they respond, what message do they see? If they don't respond, what other message do they see, et cetera, and create this whole workflow process to get them to ultimately, in this situation, either register for the event, would be our conversion, renew their membership, that would be our conversion process, et cetera, and be able to set them up for the success so that we can automate that whole process. Now, this can be working for me. Okay? So I can be worried about what can I do that will be really incredible to work on the benefit side instead of working on the tactical side. So the system is working while I'm not and automatically spitting out these emails. And again, I can now stand back and look at my reporting and then make any modification on things in terms of coupons, incentives, rewards, etc. Okay? So last, after we talked about all that, so I think, just to reiterate, what we really need to do as our keys in marketing automation is, I would contend, first and foremost, understand the mindset. Understand that we're moving to this world where these seismic shifts have changed, where we truly are user-centric. The organization has to shift around to what the actual users want, where our time as marketers and communications folks are spent really understanding the data and our members and understanding them from a quantitative aspect as well as qualitative. Really then being able to hone in and say we can't serve everyone. It's not okay anymore to have mass market where we're going to send out, one version of one newsletter only. Understanding that we really have to give each sect of our audience that's going to be, that we care about, that's either going to net us more money or that's going to long-term result into more money, et cetera. Understanding who they are, understanding what that whole user journey might be, what that might look like, to really define those campaigns, and to then use these tools like we're showing here to get the right tools to allow us to automate that whole process and get us into a point where what we're doing is the creative process and the analysis process. So we can really do this and get our life back. So what we're not doing, again, can't emphasize enough, clearly I don't like the cutting and pasting and list management viewpoint, but what we want to do is find a way that we can really do that, because that's what's going to move our organization forward. That's what's going to allow us to get those brand stories out there. That's what's going to allow us to be compelling and have people want to engage with us, right? We got to free up our time. We're not going to get more time. We got to reallocate our time. So if we can use these marketing automation tools to do that, that's going to allow us to really jump ahead and make a monumental leap forward in our actual customer care and the experience of our members. All of that takes, number 5, discipline to do so. But organizations that have crossed over, is what I call it, that they've crossed over and they said, oh, this is the way we should do it. Again, I mentioned many of them: Starbucks, Zappos, Under Armour, Nike, Dick's Sporting Goods, etc. Once they do that, obviously, Apple is another one. It's amazing what the brand can do, and it takes off. And so clearly it works. So we can make this work for us in the association nonprofit market because these worlds are converging. So if we can learn some of these new practices, understand some of these new fundamentals, and take on these tools and techniques, we can monumentally move forward. That's all the pieces that I had today that I wanted to cover. I'm happy to take a couple questions, which I see I've got. And last but not least, I just want to remind you, we want you to live your life. And November is Automation Month. So, if this is a topic that's appealing to you, we've got a couple more webinars that we've lined up, and I'm just put them out there just to make you aware, because we do want to talk about that, crafting that multi-touchpoint messaging strategy. That's later on this month, and also really automating content marketing, which I think is huge. We have a tool that allows you to automatically pull content from your website and automatically populate your newsletter. The first time I saw it, I think I cried as a marketer. And then also, how can you automate social marketing? Because that's another area of association nonprofit marketing that is a huge time suck. So if we can help speed that up, we can do more. All of these webinars you can register for at HighRoad U, as well as we've got all the archives for our past 2 months, which was membership marketing and event marketing, are also online for you to use and peruse as you please. So at this point, I think I have time for a couple of questions. All right.
Okay, great. It is time for the Q&A segment of our webinar. Your participation is key, so please don't be afraid to ask any questions. You can type your questions into the web conference system by putting them in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of the screen, and then clicking the call-out button or hitting enter on your keyboard. And as you're doing that, just a quick reminder that HighRoad Solution is an ASAE, CAE approved provider for educational content. With your participation in this live event, you have earned some CAE credit. To be accounted for, please enter your first and last name into the Q&A box to ensure that we can tally that. All right, so the questions. First question was actually a thank you for the corporate examples. And what associations are successfully automating their marketing? Are they all big associations?
Oh, excellent question. You know what? Some of the best ones, sometimes, here's the thing. The benefit of having a big association is you actually have a lot of hands. So it's oftentimes they're not the ones who are automating. A lot of times the small organizations are the ones who are automating out of necessity because they just don't have enough hands to do enough things. So you're seeing a lot of small organizations are trying to automate and get, because it can allow you to look like you're doing a lot more than the number of staff you have, right? At the same token, what large associations have the huge advantage of is they usually have a better defined cross-functional team of marketing and technology folks who are working in tandem. So they usually have they usually are far ahead on understanding the segmentation and being able to actually slice and dice their data and really get to that point where they're able to do these integrations. And that's, again, I want to really be clear on that, because marketing automation is great, but if you don't have the integrations with your association management systems and your content management systems and your other systems like webinars and events and surveys and things like that, you're never going to optimize your data ecosystem. So from our standpoint, large associations are the ones who have understood quickly that where the investment dollar needs to go is in the integrations, because they're going to be able to do more with it. So they can automate those campaigns, but again, like I was saying, pull in all that really pertinent member profile data into those systems and allow emails to queue up off of that. That becomes key. And the smaller associations are still kind of, they might buy the marketing automation tool, but then they put everything into the tool. They're tool-based, and they're not thinking about the strategy piece and stepping back in the user experience. So I think we're seeing all sizes do this, but I think in different ways. And I think that's the key thing to take away is the blending of the two. Do the integrations, get the data flowing between systems, do the strategy, and then the automation.
Okay, great. Next question actually seems like a pretty good follow-up to that. The marketing department at my small association is me. I am time crunched and resource challenged. Can you provide some practical how-to tips on how I can start?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, here's one that's not per se what we're talking about, but if you're not using Google Alerts just to cull together content that's happening in your world, that would be the low-cost must-have to do that. Getting really familiar with Google Analytics will help you down the path of marketing automation, because you can start at least seeing which pages are kind of hot spots for possible conversion or activity in your user. So that's something that you want to get up to speed on as well. And then I think for the small or the one staff person who's perhaps more than marketing, probably marketing and communications and a bunch of other stuff, probably event planning as well, probably the key is to get onto a really good email platform that you can get those emails kicking out there for you without you having to do too much with it. That's probably one of the key pieces, because email can really take up quite a bit of time. So getting a platform that allows you to do that automation is going to be something that I think is going to be really critical to you.
All right, great. Looks like that's all the questions at this point. If you do have questions, definitely feel free to type them in. If we're getting ready to wrap up here, if we don't have a chance to get to it, then we will follow up in an email with answers to those questions. So Suzanne, at this point, do you want a quick wrap up, and then I'll close it down?
Yeah, so I'd love to have some feedback on this topic as a whole and other pieces that people are interested in hearing about. All of our webinars that we do are based on the feedback that we're getting from, first and foremost, our clients, and then what we're also seeing in the industry. So we want to see more people do automation. We want to see people move forward with these buyer personas and journey maps and understand their data and get these systems integrated and flowing. So again, key points with automation: change the mindset, adopt the mindset, get user-centric, get the right tools, use them. Get to the point where your tool, if you've got HighRoad solution, make sure you really are starting to use the strategy blueprints that are available already in the tool without any additional money. make sure you're taking advantage of that and setting yourself up to live your life better.
Great. And thank you, everyone, for your participation in today's webinar, What is Marketing Automation? Special thank you to our speaker, Suzanne Carwin. In order to meet your educational content needs, we need to know what you think. So as Suzanne said, please take a moment, complete the short survey located in the important information box in the top right-hand corner. Be sure to join us for our remaining November HighRoad U webinars focusing on marketing automation, including next Monday's presentation with Suzanne on multi-touchpoint messaging. If you have any additional questions or comments, please email us at support@highroadsolution.com. Today's session was recorded. You will receive an email within the next few days with a link to the webinar recording. Today's webinar is copyrighted by HighRoad Solution with all rights reserved. This concludes today's program. Thank you, and you may now disconnect.